Hey everybody, welcome back to another Striper Migration Report from On the Water magazine. My name's Matt Haeffner, I'm the assistant editor here at On the Water, and while I'd like to say striped bass fishing is as good as it gets right now across the coast, it's really only going to get better. The ASMFC implemented an emergency action plan, lowering the slot size for striped bass coastwide from 28 to 35 inches down to 28 to 31 inches. So this emergency action was taken by the ASMFC in order to help striped bass stocks rebuild by 2029. On the Water's Jimmy Fee will touch on that a little bit more later. But for right now, let's cover the migration and the bite across the coast. In the Chesapeake Bay earlier this week, trophy striped bass fishing season began, which means anglers can keep one fish over 35 inches. Now, while I can't speak a ton on the trophy striped bass fishing inside Chesapeake Bay, out front on the Atlantic-facing beaches, anglers have been finding striped bass in the high teen to low 20-inch range. And that trend continues as we move on up the coast towards Delaware Bay and southern New Jersey. We've gotten word of a lot of big breeder fish leaving the Delaware Bay, and as they head out around Cape May, they're going to be hugging tight to those beaches. Now, a lot of the fish in the southern New Jersey surf this week have been in the 30 to 40-inch range, and that's a direct result of those fish heading out of the Delaware Bay area. But the action isn't only in the surf. Captain Brian Williams of Bad Fish Charters in Ocean City, New Jersey, has been finding a really good bite on small soft plastics in the back bays. Meanwhile, just a little bit further up the coast, anglers looking to target bluefish in the surf have caught some striped bass at night this week. Grumpy's Tackle posted this photo of a quality striped bass that was taken on a blurple Yozuri Hydro minnow by an angler who was looking to target some bluefish at night with swimming plugs. Last week, we actually mentioned how important it is as a surf caster to have blurple, meaning black and purple swimming plugs, or soft plastics in your bag, especially at night. And a lot of those bigger bass are going to be moving further up the coast this coming week, especially with the full moon tide this weekend, which would explain why a lot of the boats around western Long Island and New York City are finding big fish covered in sea lice. Those fish are really honed in on bunker schools, especially in Jamaica Bay. I was able to get out actually last week with a couple of my buddies on Jamaica Bay, and it was a strictly bunker bite. If you didn't have live bunker, you just were not catching fish for the whole first half of the morning. But as the live bunker bite died down and the wind picked up, we actually bumped into a couple topwater feeds, and I managed to land a couple fish on the Super Strike Little Neck Popper. Much like the live bunker bite going on the South Shore, the western Long Island Sound has absolutely exploded with big bass this week. They're also enjoying a live bunker bite up there. As stripers continue to leave the Hudson, the bite in the Long Island Sound is going to significantly improve. The beaches on the North Shore of Long Island and across the Long Island Sound in Connecticut have seen a good push of bass well over the 30-inch range. And that bite's only going to continue to improve. Meanwhile, in many of Connecticut's rivers, especially on those muddy flats toward the river mouths, larger resident fish have been entertaining anglers with topwater plugs. Meanwhile, back on the forks of Long Island, and in between the forks, the Peconic Bays are lighting up with bass this week, and there's a good amount of weak fish mixed in with them. It's safe to assume that the full moon tides this weekend will bring a whole new push of migratory bass across the Sound and into the waters of Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Cape Cod. Speaking of Rhode Island, Narragansett Bay is loaded with fish right now. And while most of them are in that slot size of 28 to 31 inches, we've got plenty of fish pushing the 30-pound range. Now, for kayak and surf anglers in Rhode Island around the Narragansett Bay area, it seems like having a few different types of topwaters is essential to finding the fish. There's a good amount of squid in Narragansett Bay, so bucktails will also be a great option. But walk-the-dog style topwaters, like the Game On X-Walk, are crucial plugs to keep in your bag, especially if you're fishing around bunker schools. A little to the east of Narragansett Bay, western Buzzards Bay has lit up with fish this week. We've got reports of fish up to 40 inches in Buzzards Bay, and reports of fish up to 25 pounds moving in and out of the canal with those tides. There's a smorgasbord of bait from full-size adult bunker, herring, squid, you name it, the bass are chasing it. And it might make it a little difficult to find a steady bite sometimes, but cover all your bases, bring some topwater plugs, bucktails, swimming plugs, and a good mix of 4 to 5 inch soft plastics just in case you bump into a school blitzing on spearing. I can personally attest to the fact that there is bait everywhere around Cape Cod right now. On the south side in particular, I'm seeing schools of herring and silversides at night. Silversides also meaning spearing. I even saw a few small pods of straggler squid being harassed by what I would say were probably slot-sized bass last night. Now, while the slot fish are in across most of Cape Cod, it seems like the concentration of big fish, meaning 40 inches plus, is going to be in the Cape Cod Canal, on breaking tides, or in Buzzards Bay during low light hours. And just a little further north of Cape Cod, pushing through the canal up to the South Shore around Boston, we've got reports of schoolies and slot-sized bass flooding the bays. and they are annihilating topwater plugs, just like the game on X-Walk. When there's big bait around, you cannot go wrong with a walk the dog style plug. Now, it's really that long side-to-side action of the walk the dog style plug that looks like an injured bunker or a dying herring or something of that sort. Now, there are plenty of times where the fish just aren't willing to take a big topwater walk the dog style plug, and in that case, you can throw on something like a glider. A glider will perfectly match the profile of one of those large adult bunker or herring that imitates a wounded baitfish. I was able to put together a bite on the south side of Cape Cod this week using the Yozuri crystal minnow. I noticed a lot of spearing in the water, and that's why I threw on, the smaller profile 1 ounce lure is going to still cast a long distance so you can cover water, but it digs a little bit deeper, I find, than the Yozuri mag darter, which, white mag darter, you can't go wrong, but the white crystal minnow just dug a little bit deeper in that current and picked up some of those fish on the channel edges that I would have been, I think, glossing right over with a mag darter. So it seems like things are really going to pick up this weekend with these full moon tides. I would say the South Shore of Massachusetts has a lot to look forward to, especially knowing that there's 25-pound fish in the canal. We know what the presence of adult bunker did last year in the Plymouth area. So get those big topwater walkers ready and stick a couple gliders in your bag as well. And while I'd love to sit and talk about the trials and tribulations of my own striper fishing this week in the backwaters, I'm going to kick over the rest of the report to On the Water's Jimmy Fee.
Now, the biggest news in the striped bass world this week had nothing to do with what fish were caught and everything to do with the new regulations we can expect later this spring. The Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, those are the folks in charge of setting the regulations for our favorite fish, including the striped bass, met on Tuesday and enacted an emergency action. That's going to put in place a 31-inch maximum size limit on striped bass, which is going to result in a 28-inch to 31-inch slot limit for stripers. Now, they asked that states put this into place as soon as possible and no later than July 2nd. So keep an eye on your state's regulations and on onthewater.com. We'll be letting you know as states put those new regulations into effect. Overall, this is great news for the striped bass fishery. We're going to help protect those fish spawned in 2015, which was the last year we had a really great spawn in the Chesapeake Bay. Recruitment numbers from the last 4 years were pretty substantially below average, and things for 2023 aren't looking very good either. Warm winters and dry springs are a bad combination for striped bass spawning. While it's great we're going to be protecting these fish, it's essential, more important than ever, that we practice good catch and release with striped bass. That means minimizing their time out of the water, supporting their weight horizontally, and then getting them back in as quickly as possible. So keep an eye on onthewater.com for any updates to the regulations as this situation develops. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.